when I got out of school, I was sort of looking for an opportunity to get into film production, and I'd always had an interest in special effects, and so I got a phone book. It was like an industry phone book, and it had a section on special effects companies, and so I went through the book and kind of went door to door trying to figure it out. And I went to Apogee, but gate was locked, couldn't get in there. Went to Boss Film, gate was locked, couldn't get in there. And I got to the F's and got to Fantasy 2 Film Effects, which in Burbank. It's a small company run by Jein Warren Jr. And they were shooting something in the parking lot. It was just a lucky break for me that they happened to be shooting outside. And so I was able to kind of get in there and talk to people, and ultimately met with Mike Joyce, who was running the model shop for them at the time. And I said I was really interested in coming to work there, and they needed an extra set of hands for like a week, they said. And so I said, well, I'll drop everything I'm doing and I'll show up. And so that's what I did. And so I started working as a PA there at Fantasy 2 on Fright Night 2 was the movie, and basically helping out any way I could, which was sweeping floors and getting coffees and things like that, of course, like most PAs do. But along the way, Fantasy 2 is such an amazing place to start working, because it was like a small kind of family-owned company, but they did all kinds of stuff. And so they had a model shop, and they're building miniatures and doing all that stuff. So I'm learning about mold making, and I'm building things, and I'm learning about how that works. But I'm also getting to see the creature shop. They had a full creature shop there, building all kinds of vampire monsters and stuff for the movie, which was run by Bart Mixon, who it was incredible to see. They had an optical department, Image 3, which was doing end crawl titles and title sequences and animation and opticals and all this photochemical optical printer stuff. And then they had a shooting stage, so they're shooting inserts of like live action stuff, of like, insert photography that people, sort of second unit kind of things, and some visual effects oriented stuff. They were doing stunts. I mean, I remember they did this gag where Jein dressed up like a werewolf and fell off of a 40-foot scaffolding that we built into a blue screen. I mean, we were doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and such an amazing experience to be there. So I ended up, kind of getting extended. I'd get to Friday and I'd say, oh, do you need work next week? And they'd say, yeah, come back next week. And that just kind of kept going week after week after week. It was about 3 months that show went on. Got to work with Joe Viscoso on that show. He did some amazing pyrotechnics, so I got to see that as well. And it's just an incredible introduction to the industry with these folks. And along the way, another PA there was John Warren, who I ended up starting Vision Crew with years later. But so I finished that job, and then I didn't really have any kind of significant connections in the industry or anything like that. I met a few people there at Fantasy 2, but that was about it. So I had to kind of hustle a little bit, and even though I had some experience in the industry and things like that, it took me a little bit to find my next job. But I was lucky enough to get a job as a PA, well, really a driver at Boss Film. And so started at Boss, and the scale of Boss was immense. I mean, this was like a half of a city block there in Marina del Rey, and it was an incredible place to after coming from Fantasy 2, which was really this small little operation. This is like, one of the largest visual effects companies in the world. So it was pretty inspiring and exciting to be around. And they also had a huge model shop, and the model shop was run at the time when I started by Mark Stetson. But, Mark was kind of finishing up his time at Boss and starting Stetson Visual Services. And so Dave Jones came in to take over the model shop and kind of rebuild it. And when that happened, they needed new PAs because Mark kind of took a bunch of his crew with him. So I got an opportunity to join. Scott Schneider was essentially the PA when I started, and then I started and he got promoted, and that's kind of how it worked. And so I got a chance to start in the model shop at Boss, and initially as a PA, just helping kind of get them reset up with new tools and all the stuff. And we had a show, which was Hunt for Red October. So we started, Greg Jein came in, David brought in Greg to run the model shop for Hunt for Red October. We're building these amazing submarines. And that was really neat, and I got the chance to be a part of, sort of doing all the mold making and all that stuff on that show. Meanwhile, helping out on some commercials. We did this DHL commercials at the time, which people remember, with the little miniature DHL vans delivering packages and stuff. And then also Solar Crisis started around that same time at Boss. And so really, was kind of lucky to be exposed to all of these legendary people in the world of model making, all kind of being there in that model shop at that time. So you're talking about, 50 of the best model makers in the world were working there, and I was getting a chance to kind of like get to know these people. So Les Ecker became like a mentor to me at that time, and Dave, of course, and all of these guys. It was incredible. So it was really an amazing time to be there, and I was lucky because I feel like the generation of people that I was working with had all worked on, Star Trek and Blade Runner and all these shows, and I kind of got the benefit of all their knowledge, kind of building this industry. I've been at Marvel now for going on almost 8 years, and so and getting to work on all this crazy, huge projects, but we don't do a ton of miniature work anymore. I did have a kind of a unique opportunity to work on Ant-Man 1. I was the second unit visual effects supervisor on Ant-Man 1, and we ended up doing quite a bit of motion control on that show because we were shooting not miniatures per se, but micro sets for Ant-Man to run around on, and so we ended up doing, I think, like 40 days of motion control on that show. It was like, how often do you do that? So that was really, really a fun project as well, that kind of like leveraged all this early experience that I had doing miniatures and doing this kind of thing for the beginning of my career.